Hi, folks. Welcome back to another episode of WorkYogi Diaries. This is your host, Santosh Shiva. I bring you conversations with people who are masters of their craft or are on a journey to be masters. They see their work as a form of self expression, not just to pay bills or to get by. I hope through these conversations we get to hear new ideas, new ways of thinking and acting, new strategies, and perhaps inspire us to take our game to the next level. If you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing to it. Hit like if you like this video, and please leave your comments and let us know if you took something away. In the house today, pleased to have Uday Kumar, an old friend, a technologist who has been passionately on a quest to document and preserve the local history of one of world's most important cities, Bengaluru. If you thought Bengaluru is a colonial city that mushroomed into a metropolis because of industrialization and technology boom, you are in the majority. However, the truth is something more than that. Bengaluru has had a history that goes back for more than 1,000 years. Our guest today, through his passion and drive, has pulled together a citizen coalition that searches, preserves, and in some cases recreates ancient inscription stones that tell a local history. This project will serve future generations to come. Let's jump in and find out the what, why, and how of this incredible initiative. Hey Udaya, welcome to WorkYogi Diaries.
Thank you, Santosh.
It's so good to talk to you. We know each other for probably 20 years now,
Three
and
decades. 3 decades. It's
three
91.
decades.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And it's so good to see you do something fascinating, which is so dear to all of us who are from Bangalore or Bengaluru, in whatever you want to say it. But before we get into it, I'll let you do a quick personal introduction and then we'll jump in.
Yeah. So I like to think of myself more as a Bangalorean than anything else.
Hmm.
Really the claim to fame is Bangalore and nothing else so much. So been here all my life, was born here, grew up here, stayed here, and hopefully will finish it here if all goes well. Okay. So along the way, studied to be an engineer, as most Bangaloreans did, and then went up the management road. So worked in a few companies, General Electric. We met each other in Tata Elxsi first,
Yeah.
and then General Electric and Schneider Electric.
Hmm.
So about 3 decades in three different multinationals.
Mhm.
And then along the way, sometime I discovered a story of Bangalore which I found fascinating.
Hmm.
So went around digging, for more about that, and that led to a fascinating journey. So today I like to identify myself more as a Bangalorean who knows a little bit about the story of the city than all the other things that I've done before in life now. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we are here to talk about, right? And I think you're doing a huge service to everyone who has touched Bangalore in some way, and so that's what we're getting into. You have taken your personal time and are reconstructing a narrative or knowledge about the local history, live history. It's not even like some lost history, but live history. So actually, let's dig into that. So Bengaluru history, right? Not many people know of it. We all know of it. Our popular narrative is it was a small village called Bengaluru, and that's what we've been told. And there's nothing more beyond that. We all think of it as some small village at once upon a time. The British came, and then the IT came, and that's how Bangalore is not what it is. But it's not. That's not the case in what you have discovered.
Yeah.
So let's maybe jump into it and do a bit of a flashback here as to what got you interested in the first place to actually get into this.
Yeah. Um, so what got me interested was actually an accident. Well, like I said, I've always been identifying myself with Bangalore. This is my home. Aside of that, There was an interesting incident about 5 years ago in 2017 when someone actually, I don't remember exactly whether it was in written or someone told me this, but so where I am now, right now, is Rajajinagar first block, first R block, it's called. So as I was growing up in and around this place, there was nothing but there were a couple of villages around here, and one of the villages was called Ketmaranahalli, which today I think not even postmen know. It's buried, it's buried in the in the many blocks and all of that. So that's where I spent a lot of time. We had friends. If you had to go to anywhere else, you had to go via Ketmarnalli. You want to watch a movie in Naurang, you walk past Ketmarnalli. You want to go to Malleshwaram, you would go through Ketmarnalli. Anywhere and everywhere, you were passing by Ketmarnalli. And not to mention all the hundreds and thousands of cricket matches you played with the team here and with the Ketmarnalli team. So I identified myself more as a Ketmarnalli old timer there now. And around 2017, somebody told me that, do you know there's a inscription in Ketmarnalli from the 14th century which mentions Ketmarnalli.
Wow.
Now, if you can imagine, it's just a two street is probably a bad word, lane village, just tiled houses and nothing significant in that place visibly. It's just another. It just could be another village in anywhere in the country, and that was quite shocking because I had no clue that this place was 700 years old, and that there
Wow.
was a written record of the place from then, which was right there in somewhere close to the place. Since I grew up here, I was very familiar with the neighborhood, but neither I nor any of my friends around here had heard the story before. I was very curious about that and went searching for that stone and discovered that the stone had been destroyed in the 50s.
Okay.
Late 60s, early 50s, it had been, early 60s, late 50s, it had been destroyed casually because there was somebody wanted to build a home where the stone was, and they just dislodged it and they broke it, used the stone, and built a house. Now, that was a step that was terrible because it kind of shook me up and said, look, if the place right where you're growing up and spent all your life had that kind of an incredible history, why are we kind of talking about Bangalore being, unlike what you said, there are three, four notions
Yeah.
about Bangalore. Modern day migrants to Bangalore call it as a place that happened after the ITBT revolution, which is the 90s and 2000s. A lot of other people who think that the city really was came about colonial times after the British came here.
Yeah.
A lot of the English-speaking people, especially the English, I would say the not so Kannada or Tamil or Telugu literate people, tend to believe this is a colonial city. And then the native Bangaloreans, such as like you and me, we grew up on the story that it was founded by Kempegowda around 16th centuries. But here's a place which is in Bangalore, and I identify myself with Bangalore, and I identify with this particular village, which goes back 700 years. Okay, so at that time I used to, my office was at the other end of the city, a place called Kadbisnalli on Outer Ring Road, and I stay in Rajasnagar, so diametrically opposite ends of the city. So all this is documented in a book called the Epigraphia Karnataka. And when I was looking around for this Ketmanalli inscription stone, I discovered that in and around both the locations, home and office, there were tens of these such inscriptions. There's one in Yeshwanthpur, there's one in Hebbala, there's one in Kodihalli, there's one in Pinya, which are all right, around the place where I live. And around my office, there was one in, Vibhutipura, there was one in Yamlur. There was one in a place called Panatur. There was one in a place called Martali, all which are just a kilometer or two between of my workplace. And I started to search for them. The book itself is a 100-year-old book, so the references, the locational references in the book are outdated today. So the book will say there's an inscription stone from the 10th century under a tree, tamarind tree, mango tree, or banyan tree, or something, in the village of Pinya. It's very unlikely you will find a 100-year-old tamarind or mango or a banyan tree in Pinya today.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the hunting is you have to go look for it. You just can't go ask and find out. And then I
Yeah.
discovered that about the in the city of Bangalore, about 175 such inscription stones have been documented, starting from the 8th century, 750 AD
Wow.
to now. About not now really, to the 16th century. 175 such inscriptions have been documented everywhere in the city. Almost about a half of them are being destroyed.
Wow.
Okay, so that's something else. But that's when I started to. When you read these inscriptions, they are in English, Kannada, and Tamil. I mean, the translations are in English. The inscriptions are in Telugu, Kannada, and Tamil, all three languages. Even if you can't read the 10th century script itself, you can figure it is clearly written in English what it states. So the story of that's narrated in these inscriptions pretty easy to learn.
So what is this? I mean, are these some of these inscriptions property stones, or are they all
No,
related to?
no, they're all records of something significant that happened at that place.
Hmm.
Okay, for example, the one in Kirtmanalli that I'm talking about is a record of the gift of a village. Actually, it is not Kirtmanalli; it's called Juganahalli, which is Rajasnagar third block today. Behind the ESI hospital, there's a place called Juganahalli. That village was granted or gifted to an individual for some act of his, some worthy act. He was gifted that village. Basically means that the revenue collected from that village, the taxes collected from that village, would be paid to this person. And he did something significant, and that's why that was inscribed on stone. And that land grant is grant for perpetuity. It's forever. Okay, it's not.
And this is during what
So
time?
this
Time
so
is
this
it
particular
under?
one was at 1341 AD.
This is what Krishna Devaraya
No, no,
times or much later?
1341 was just when um, the Vijayanagar Empire was starting. 1336, 1337 was when the Vijayanagar Empire was founded. So this is 5-6 years
Okay,
after that.
prior to
Okay,
that.
Krishna
Okay.
Devaraya and came about 200 years after this almost. It's around 1509,
Okay.
1520 is when Krishna Devaraya came. Um,
Okay.
So that aside, so the point you made just now about Krishna Deva Raya is an excellent point to understand how we understand how we've been taught history. What I'm talking here is ultra local, and what I'm talking here is not political. It's not the story of kings. It's not the story of dynasties. It's a story of my home. Okay,
Right.
kings don't
Right.
figure in this. Dynasties don't figure in this, and that place has lived through many kings and dynasties. Okay, since then, so let's say this was from 1340 something. So since
Right.
then, there's been lots of dynasties, lots of whatever, but we identify the past with kings and dynasties, and we ignore the place,
Right. Right.
right? So that's what it is. In these kind of events could be anything. It could be building of a lake, construction of a lake. It could be celebration of a festival. It could be celebration of eclipse. Eclipses were big times when you made donations. People believed that you would accumulate more punya, if you donated during the time of an eclipse. So they would donate, and all these donations are perpetual donations. So they run forever. So year after year after year, you're committing to give some money to a institution. It could be a temple, it could be a charitable, whatever, all of that. Okay. So they narrate the story of that place. In this case, again, going back to the Ketmanalli example, a man called Perumal was given the village. So you know a resident's name 700 years ago, today.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're not talking kings, you're talking local people, you're talking local events, you're talking local places.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
So you begin. So when you understand the story, you realize that every nook and corner of Bangalore has such an evidenced past. It's not folklore. It's not that hand-me-down story coming down or whatever. It was written on that day. The day is even date is even mentioned on the stones when it was written. On that day,
Yeah.
and they narrate the story of something which is immediate to you. All I mean,
Mm.
so all it could be your ancestor 700 years ago, a direct ancestor
Yeah.
itself. Yeah,
Yeah.
assuming you are from
Yeah.
that village.
Yeah.
So the story.
That's a
Yeah,
great point. It's a great. One of the point that you're making, which is like a light bulb went off on my head. Right. You're right that all of us, I can say for myself, and I think it represents a common way we look at history. It's through
correct.
political upheavals,
Right,
political
right.
periods. You're right. We don't care about really what happened on the ground, or there isn't much focus on local events. We don't look at history like that at all, right?
That's not because we don't know that. It's well known. It's well
Hmm.
documented too. Except that historians for a long time, a majority of the historians for a long time have focused on political history.
Hmm.
What is history? It's really everything that has happened in the past.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
kings and dynasties were a part of that story.
yeah,
Okay, there was agriculture. There was food that was grown. There was disease that
yeah,
just like we have the COVID now. They had innumerable such
yeah,
epidemics.
yeah,
Then there were floods, and people did things. Not just kings and queens.
yeah.
It's not like the president of US is the only one who's doing anything useful in the US, or it's not the
Correct.
president of
Exactly.
or the prime minister of India is the only one who's doing anything useful in India today. You and I are doing something worthy too,
Correct.
right?
Yeah,
Except that the perspective of a person is of a few people have made us look at the past in terms of kings and queen and dynasties and nothing else, right?
yeah.
So that's part. And so when I went in there and then I discovered every nook and corner of Bangalore has this story. I said, "What the hell? Why are
Hmm.
we keeping quiet about this? Why isn't anyone even aware of all this? More importantly, they're all getting destroyed. Yeah,
Hmm.
because of all the development that's happening, people don't know this. They don't understand the worth of it, and they destroy it casually. Right.
Right.
Um, so that's really what.
That's
Yeah.
the background. So, for you to have, so first off, is history something? Are you passionate about history in general, or is it
No,
just
no,
that
no,
this particular
no,
project
no,
got you
not at
excited?
all. I really did not like history because as a subject when it was taught in school and the colleges are spoken about
Yeah,
generally, um, because it's all about some king the third and that queen the fourth and that dynasty
yeah,
and this battle and all of that. It just one, it
yeah,
was heavy on my brain to remember all the dates and pass the exams. So that was a big deal.
yeah,
That was a big problem. There wasn't anything
yeah,
fascinating
yeah,
in just kind of memorizing all of that and regurgitating all of that stuff. It didn't make sense. I said, How the hell
yeah,
does history have
yeah,
anything to do with my life today?" Okay,
yeah,
I've always been a
yeah,
science and technology guy, which made, for one, it
yeah,
was fascinating because you could see what you're doing and it made a difference to everybody and you and all of that. What's the use of studying
yeah,
history was my way of thinking
yeah, yeah.
earlier. Yeah. So I was not a history guy. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's terrific. And you started it, but this is scale. This has become a kind of a initiative. It's kind of becoming a movement
Right.
now, right? So how did that come about? How did you go about getting others interested in this? And I think you also now you're also working collaborating with an NGO. So give us a sense of how did you scale this?
Right. The first thing is, I think more important is why did I take it up with a mindset that history is not useful? And
Hmm.
that comes from my background, like you said. So I spent almost 3 decades in multinational companies, touring the world, working with hardly connected with, I would say, for the past 2 decades, I've been hardly connected with India or Bangalore because all the work has been been done for companies abroad and all of that. So one of the things I discovered as a people is that our ambitions and our goals are pretty low. What I mean by that is, so if you see the sporting world today, 1 point whatever billion people are celebrating one gold medal in the Olympics. It's definitely worth celebrating. But seriously, are we just good enough for one gold? And honestly, I think that's because we
I
don't
hear what you
even
say.
aspire for more. It's the same story in science. How many Nobel laureates do we have? When was the last one we had? Whether it's science, whether it's literature, or whether it's more films, some of the I would say the humanities side slightly better. But if I look at most of the things, how many products do we claim to be from in India? Well, it's any kind of a product you think, but there's a zillion Indians in those fields today. And I think that's not
Yeah.
because either Indians are not bright enough or physically not strong enough or any of those kind of things. It's just that we don't aspire to be the
Right.
world's best. And we don't aspire to be the world's best because we don't have a baseline, because we don't have a standard. Now that we have one gold, I'm sure that the next few years we'll see more golds in the Olympics.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
The yardstick that we set ourselves is pretty low, and that yardstick is low, or that baseline is so low because the past is something we are not so aware of. Uh, if you are aware that something's been accomplished already, you begin to aim for something higher and better. This is different from a rat race. I'm just saying that in any field, if you want to do better than what's already been done, that's a natural way, all of us live and work, right? So no,
Yeah.
and this I lived through in all those companies, the world's best companies that I worked in. A lot of us were outstanding, but we would yield the top place easily to a German, a Japanese, or an American, or someone like that. Not because we are any less skilled or competent than that person, but it was just the way we are brought up. If a German supposed to be a great guy, at quality and precision and blah 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 and all of that, how can we beat him? The whole system's kind of built for Germany to do well. How can we beat the passion, dedication, precision of a Japanese? The Japanese are too good at that. The Americans have massive amounts of wealth. They can throw billions of dollars at a problem and solve it. We don't stand a chance. We're rationalizing away a lot of things and giving away or gifting away things. Right. And this is not in an individual setting I'm talking about. This is in a team or a corporate, or a group setting that, we operate in today. And that is something I had to work through as a corporate leader in most places. Said, come on, guys, you guys are no bet. You are as good as anyone else. Let's go get it and do it better. And then, when you begin to realize why are our guys as bad, not aspiring to be top grade there, then you understand that, look, they're happy and they're content to be, being second class or second position or whatever you want to call it. Because no one's done even that before. Okay. So, I, so you think back again, where does that pride come from? The pride comes from your identity. Okay. And your identity founded on fact. Okay, so when you have
Okay.
factual accomplishments backing you, let's say my father did this, my grandfather did this, my somebody else did this, my nephew did this, my brother did this, you're aspiring and going to do more for that. This is where history comes in. It doesn't matter if a king did something or someone else did something else, but if there's something which is local and touching, you would aspire to do better, and your pride in your place, in your people, in your language would be so enormous. You like it or not, you would be, out there really saying world class or really competing for that world class thing. So when I discovered this, and then, by then anyway, I had traveled a lot of places in the world. all the supposedly the greatest places that Bangalore takes you to, whether it was San Francisco or whether it was LA or whether it was New York or Boston or Berlin or Munich or any of those places, all of those places. And what I discovered there was an enormous sense of pride in their history, in their past, in their culture, in their whatever, which was severely lacking here. And then I discovered this inscription here 100 years ago, which I can't find in Silicon Valley, which you can't find anywhere else. And then you realize, what the hell? Why am I taking a backseat in my own place, and why am I behaving the way I am? I'm no inferior to anyone. Yeah. And look at and the way we bring up our children, the way we teach them the past and all of that. And I said, look, this is a story that needs to be preserved, that needs to be told to shape the future. It's not about knowing the past; it's about shaping the future. So that's when I started. I said, let's go save these incredible inscriptions all over the city of Bangalore. Let's build awareness about these inscriptions. Firstly, preserve them, create more awareness, and celebrate them. Okay, unless you celebrate it, it's no use, right? So I spoke to friends like you, and we wrote on social media and all that, and like-minded people joined, became a kind of a citizen group. A lot of people pitched in personally, financially, with their skill sets. We accomplished a lot of things. We saved many of these inscriptions, and that's how the movement or the project actually has evolved today. It's
Okay.
grown beyond Bangalore city now, so we're kind of preserving and trying to do the same for all the inscriptions in the district of Bangalore.
So, it seems like, obviously it was fired by your personal passion and your discovery realization of what you just shared, and then you had a whole bunch of citizens and friends
Yeah.
who came together, right? And but you've also built an organization now, right? It's organized, it has a structure. It's no more a, it's not a hobby anymore. It's a
Yeah.
fairly serious endeavor that you guys on. So how did that
Yeah.
happen?
So, we were working, I would say, we continue to work in a large way in an informal basis. We are not really an organization like you put it.
Mhm.
It's a bunch of
Okay.
volunteers who come together, okay, at times which suits them and in areas that suits them, and we accomplish something. Essentially, it is so what happened was, once we discovered that these inscriptions are endangered, they're going to be lost in time. Even if we put them nicely in a on a pedestal and put a glass cover around it and all of that, what's happening is, because these have been around for 1,000 years or many hundred years, and we expect them to be around for many hundred years, nature itself takes a toll on them. So the air and the rain and the sunlight, this one causes weathering of the rock. So the characters on the stone are fading away. So, coming from a technical background, obviously the first idea was: is there a technical solution for this? And then, again, spending all the years in the software IT domain. So the idea, so we tried out a few things. Can we build digital models of these inscriptions? Okay,
Okay.
can we build accurate 3D models? If you think back to the days that we were working together, it's like a CAD model. It's like the CAD models.
Stereolithography.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So again, since we aren't exactly an organization, a bunch of us experimented with the stuff that we knew. Somebody said, let's do photogrammetry. Somebody said, let's do some other methods. And we tried all of those things. And finally, we realized that uh, there was something called a digital handheld scanner, which today is getting more popular, but originally in the defense and automotive industries, which is used for reverse engineering purposes. Okay, when you want to copy something or when you want to use something, you
Yeah.
use that, and that worked well, except that the thing is terribly expensive. Okay, it's not something you can just say, okay, let me buy it and go around and do it. Um, so citizens funded. So we were doing it as services. This one, so we would hire the agency to come and scan a few inscriptions for us and give the models. We did that for a year or two. So somebody would come and say, "Look, yeah, I'm willing. How much does it cost to hire those guys for a day?" Say X amount, and they would fund it, and we'd go and scan a couple of inscriptions on our day. Then we realized that this isn't going to work. We really, for the scale of things that we want to do, so there's about 1,500 inscription stones in the district of Bangalore. Okay, so
Wow.
the two a day, one a day, renting, hiring people to come and help, do it for a day. That isn't going to work for long. So I started to approach corporates. The first thing was I approached the government. The archaeological department was really the government custodian for this, and
Okay.
it's one of the worst funded departments in our government today. They barely have money enough to get the toilets clean in the museums. That's the sad state
Wow.
of affairs. They were
Wow.
very encouraging and they were very supportive, but it was a no-brainer that they just couldn't afford any one of that. And there was no use in pointing fingers and saying, look, the government isn't doing anything, the government isn't doing anything. Because all you'll do at the end of the day is that a few more stones will get lost. And it's not the government's loss when these inscriptions or the past is lost. It's the people's loss. It's our heritage. It doesn't matter,
Mm.
the government officer is not doing it or not.
Yep.
So then I said, look, let's try and see if we can get some corporate funding. We can individual or corporate funding to fund these, scan either a scanner or scanning itself in the longer term. That didn't work very well either, because it's exactly the problem that I faced. As a corporate citizen, you don't care a damn about anything that you call as heritage here. If there is a government law that says you need to spend some money in CSR, that's called corporate social responsibility. For a corporate director who spent a lot of time in the corner office, uh, corporate social responsibility means donating some money to an orphanage, to a flood
It's
relief.
just a
Yeah, to a flood
checklist.
relief. It's a checklist item.
It's a checklist.
Okay, at most, or sometimes what you do is, let's say I'm in the electrical engineering industry. I sponsor a
Mm.
few sponsorships, or rather scholarships for electrician or electrical engineer. It's like kind of saying that's not corporate social responsibility. It's benefiting your own organization because you're creating a talent pool you hire from.
Mm, mm.
Okay. Anyways, so that's the
Yeah.
perspective. Then tried very hard, and I thought that's where my strength lie, because I'd worked the industry here for so many years. I knew all the top guys around here and all of that. Didn't go far. Um, and then one organization stepped forward. This is called the Mythic Society. It's a 110-year-old institution.
Okay.
It's actually on Riputunga Road. If you've gone on Riputunga Road, you would have seen a beautiful old colonial structure, right, in front of the Reserve Bank of India. They Their agenda is to research and work in the areas of history, archaeology, folklore, stuff like that. They were founded in 1909 by a lot of people, especially Britishers at that time, who thought the story of Mysore, which is the Mysore state, ought to be told by Mysoreans. Look at the funny this one there. A bunch of Britishers are saying, the story of Mysore ought to be told by Mysoreans, and they founded this institution. So the king donated some land and funded a building and all, and it got started. This institution is had very eminent people, advising, running, managing it, and all that, including the likes of Sir C.V. Raman, Mirza Ismail. Actually, for a long
Wow.
time, the director of the Indian Institute of Science also doubled as the president of Mythic Society, because their approach has always been, to think interdisciplinary and like that. So they'd heard my story. Somebody there had heard about the work we are doing and all of that, and they invited me for a talk. They said, "No, we will like to hear what you guys are doing in terms of the technology stuff." So a hall full of historians were packed, full of historians and researchers were there, and we showed how we do scanning and what's the benefits of that. That had a big impact. And so they said, look, how about you making a proposal for us to to do this as a full-time project? And I gave them a proposal. They liked it. They funded it. Um, so we're running it now as a full-time project. We have four PhDs in history who are working on it. So I've taken a break as well from my regular corporate job. So we go everywhere. We identify these inscriptions. We salvage them, and the word is salvage there, unfortunately. And we scan these. We build accurate, very high accuracy digital models of these, and then we are rereading everything that's been written there. It was published 100 years ago, but we still reread it because there's a lot of new things we discover. There's some mistakes in that. There's some new additional stuff we discover and all that. And then, what's the use of all of this if the story doesn't go out to the common man? There's a stone sitting in the street. That street ought to know it, should celebrate it. So we do events there. We prepare literature. We document this. So we make sure that the stone is what the contents of the stone is understood. Conservation happens, and more importantly, celebration happens. And that point that I made about pride in your place. This is not false pride. It's just it's right there, documented on stone for you to read. And that's that's how it's gathered effect now.
So the copies of that you're making,
they are
you
exactly
leave it where you originally found the original stone.
In case it's sitting on the edge of a road,
okay,
it's open to traffic and it's likely to get damaged in an accident. We shifted to a very close by temple, panchayat office, taluk office, BBMP office, a ground, park, or someplace like that. Ideally, we want it to be in that exact location it is in. So we rarely move it out of that locality. Yeah, because it's the jewel. Because it's the jewel in the crown there. So the Ketmanali stone, if I moved it, let's say, to some other place, loses its value. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. And in terms of the age of stones, what is the oldest stone you found in Bengaluru?
When we move around, we also discover new inscriptions people haven't ever discovered. And that was the one we discovered in Hebbala 3 years ago, 2018. There are many oldest. So this is at the moment we call as the oldest because it's full. It's not chipped off, it's not worn out or whatever and all that. The reading is absolutely clear. That's from 750 AD, which is about 1300 years there now, almost. And the writing in it is in Kannada. It mentions the place name to be Hebbala. Yeah. Really? So every time you drive down from Bangalore airport to your office or house, you're passing by Hebbala. It's that flyover where you're sure to get stuck in traffic jams. Look to the either side, you're looking at an area which has been around for 1300 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a very advanced civilization there.
Yeah. They were there.
Yeah.
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 That's amazing, isn't it?
So
that's amazing.
Yeah. So
is there a way?
Going back to this, how do we connect with this? It was lying in a gutter. It wasn't a drain. It's inappropriate to call it a drain because people worshipped it, but it is essentially lining a drain. It's been taken out from there now, and right in that same place, a beautiful stone Mantapa, a massive one, has been built with citizen funding. All over the place, people have funded for this. Okay. It's a structure which is in the same architectural style as was prevalent 1300 years ago. So that is called the Ganga style of architecture. Mm-hmm. Like you have the Vijayanagar, Hoysala and all of these styles of architecture. Belur Halebid is a Hoysala style of architecture. Okay, the Gangas had another style. So which is why I said a very advanced civilization. They were not a civilization. Yeah. So we built that Mantapa and kept the stone in that, the inscription stone inside that. and the contents of what's written in that is now common knowledge in that vicinity. What effect did it have today
Okay.
is when we took it out and we are conducting these events, know your neighborhood events there. A lady who was expecting to deliver just a month or two down the line, she said, "Sir," and that's her hometown, that's her home village. Okay, she said, "Sir, whatever is going to be the baby, I'm going to give that child the surname Hebbala." Okay, so the child now has is Rohit Reddy Hebbal or something like that. Okay, now imagine the children there, and this is playing out as as we are talking right now. The sense of belonging and the pride in Hebbal is so high. Earlier, it was a shanty town. It's a
Yeah.
slum. Okay. Now suddenly the people there are taking pride in a slum. So if it's very wrong, inappropriate to call it, but it's a
Yeah.
low income
Yeah.
vicinity, neighborhood.
Yeah.
Around it are, Dollars Colony, as the name itself says. People talk dollars there only. And there's Sanjay Nagar and there's Arti Nagar and there are all of these. These are all upper middle class or, I would say quite, pricey neighborhoods. And there's a sitting Hebal there. Now there's a
Yeah.
child who's
Yeah.
going to grow up there with the surname, and that child is going to see that inscription every day, and it's going to realize that this is language that I speak, which is 1300-year-old language, and this is
Yeah.
my place abroad. I bet one of those children, not all of them, will turn out to God knows what. It could fall, and
Yeah.
yeah, it could be something significant. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating, Udaya. That's really it's whatever you guys are doing is fantastic. Now, in terms of making this more accessible, like if they say you're visiting the city, right? Do you think
Yes.
that's something that would help because it kind of right people visiting Bengaluru going to these
Yeah.
spots and saying, oh, this place was there 1300 years
Yes.
back. That's the city's his heritage.
Yes, we're doing that as
Is
well. A
that
lot of
something you're
things.
thinking about?
So the first of the things that we did was we put up all the locations on a Google map. Okay. So all the
Okay.
100 plus, in fact, we did something more. What we did was we put up every documented inscription on a Google map, and we used icons to say this one's still there, this one's been killed, and this one's not traceable. So all the 175 inscriptions of the city of Bangalore are on a Google map, very precise locations. You can use that map. You can drive there. It'll land you right in front of the stone,
Hmm.
and it has all the information. There's photographs, there's videos, there's the text of the inscription in Kannada, Tamil, or English or whatever. The translations, all of that is on the Google map. Okay, as of today, we have about
Okay.
130,000 views or something like that. Okay, so who are using
Wow.
these? Like you said, some visitors to the city. It's well, ideally, all the stuff that we are doing today is not intended for tourists. It's intended for residents. Okay, we want Bangaloreans to pass to
Yeah.
Bangalore, not so
Makes
much,
sense.
someone else to not.
Start
Yeah,
with.
okay.
Let's
Uh,
start with. Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
do. So that's it's being used by all kinds of people. Some of the best experiences I had
Okay.
was a rickshaw driver, auto rickshaw driver call up and say,
Mhm.
"Sir, all those inscriptions you said were missing are not traceable, are really not traceable. Because this is my neighborhood, I live here, I grew up here. I went around to check. After having heard the stories of my villages and all that, I went around to check on those stones. You're right, they're missing." Imagine an auto rickshaw driver chasing up the history of his village like this. I think that's amazing. We have had press
Yeah.
reporters do press stories using those maps, having newspaper stories doing those kind of thing. We have students doing it. We have teachers doing it. We have regular ordinary people doing it. So everyone's been using it. Many times they get back. Often we don't know who's using it, but many times they get back and they tell us, "Look, your
Yeah.
locational accuracy was very good. I like the photo. I like the description." And this map is also entirely volunteer driven. That's one. And two, we
Okay.
now we have stopped because of COVID and lockdowns and all that. But every weekend, we would do what we call as the Know Your Neighborhood events. So we gather the neighborhood there, and for an hour or two, explain the story that's being documented in the stone. We also give out literature. Okay. Then there's media coverage. The press always a lot of press articles have been published on this. And the other big thing we use extensively is social media, Facebook and Twitter. Um, Almost on a daily basis, there's something that's being written either by us or by someone else there, and all of that, sharing information about the places, the photos, their understanding of what's written there, all of those kind of stuff as well. Uh, the Mythic Society project that I'm talking about, what we are doing here is we take a neighborhood and then we are using the digital models. We narrate the story of that neighborhood in the form of a story. It's intended for an ordinary person. It's not intended for a historian or a researcher. We use simple
Mhm.
language. It's written in Kannada and
Okay.
it's written in English. Extremely simple language. Our target reader is an 8th standard pass student. Okay, if an 8th standard student can read, so can a PhD. So the logic is the other way around. We're
Yeah,
writing those
of course.
papers which connect the
Yeah.
current with the past, the present with the past. Okay, and
Mhm.
so those are not out yet.
Yep.
They're in the process of development. They're being worked on today. Hopefully, by the end of the year, we will release these. They will be in electronic form. We'll leverage WhatsApp, the best communication tool around today, extensively for that. Uh, they will be
Mhm.
they will be copyrighted, but they will be freely shareable. Yeah, so it will work its way into books,
Right. Right.
podcasts like this, video clips, and all of that. For making it tourist friendly, not so sure. I tried to do it through a tourism minister at one time. I think it's very early days to build it into a tourist level kind of a circuit now. But
Yeah.
there are other groups, like there's a cyclist group who uses the map and they go around cycling
Mhm.
there. And there's a runners group who are favorite there. So on Mahashivaratri night, when they're doing the Jagarane, they do the all night runs and they're covering inscription stones. They covered inscription stones 1 year. Yeah. So yeah, those kind of things
Wow.
are happening.
That's fun.
But remember this though, that everything here is gigantic. So it's a 1.25 crore population. If you're able to touch 1% or 2% of that, then it's
Yeah.
a big deal.
Absolutely. And in terms of call
Yeah.
for action, Udaya, I know this is a citizens
Yeah.
led project. How can people contribute? And we
Right.
can share the links in
So
show notes.
right.
Um,
So the
yeah. Can you
first
talk to that?
and simplest and the easiest thing, or maybe the hardest thing for anyone to do, go see these stones. Okay. Uh,
Yeah.
the stone will stay alive. It will be understood. It will be appreciated when you go see it. No amount of showing slides and showing photos or reading about this is going to help.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing for the people to do. Okay. Oh, this is in that village there, is it? Oh, that slum there, is it? They put off. I would rather go see the Taj Mahal. We go rather see the Hampi. We would go rather see a lot of the, Egypt or China or whatever else, wherever else you want to go. But you don't want to go see that stone there. And that's the hardest thing. If you can get a person to go see it, I think you've done
Mm.
a great service to yourself and to the place. One. And I bet once you go there and you
Yeah.
understand the stone. So remember, the stone's not beautiful. It's not a sculpture. It's not visually appealing. The value of that stone is what is written in
Yeah.
that. And for you to understand what's written in that, you need to make an
Yeah.
effort. It's just not that I see and gather it. You have to see, you have to read and you have to learn. Once we do that, I bet you are sure to ask that question: why is this ignored? Why is this not known to me? How can I make this story grow? How can I make this story more popular? You can do your own thing. And I'll give a few examples. A few ladies, inspired by what's on the stone, have written short stories. They write stories. Okay? Fictional short stories inspired by what's recorded in the stone. The stone itself is narrating the story of a local hero. And by the way, this is also a Hebbala. They've done it for already 11 places or something like that. So how was the child when it was growing up? What was the influence of, what is the neighborhood like? Why did he end up doing what he did? Which is, he fought, gave away his life. He died a martyr. Lovely stories they have written. They're now serialized in magazines. They're on a popular blog and all that. They're a major hit.
I see.
If you're a photographer, just go photograph the place and share it freely. A lot of people want to write about it, but they're not good at photography. They want good photographs. So a friend of mine who is one of the top photographers in the country, an icon, whatever, and all that, he shot over 30 of these stones, and they are available on the web freely for you to use. There's hundreds of photos put up on the Wikipedia today. Wikimedia has lots of photographs. We can train anyone who is interested to learn more and go ahead and do those know your neighborhood events yourself. Children are thirsting for this kind of information. They love it. Take a children's group there. It could be your own, it could be your neighbors, it could be a school, it could be whoever. They love it. Okay. You don't want to do any one of those, but let's say you have money to share. Hey, boss, I am living in somewhere. I can't do this. I'm old. I don't have all that. No worries at all. We desperately need money for all these activities. Okay, we have a lot of giveaways that during these events, and it takes a lot of money to conduct these events. We don't. Everything is on a volunteer basis. But let's say somebody is
Yeah.
giving us a PA system, or let's give doing something else. It takes money to do these things.
Yeah.
Happy to do that. A lot of the scans, the project itself
Yeah.
today, which is the first of its kind in the world, started as a citizen funded activity. Somebody said, look, this inscription in Malleshwaram. Malleshwaram is where I grew up. I'll fund the scanning of this. Let's go ahead and do that. If the stones need to be relocated. Let's say it's sitting at the edge of a road. It needs to be shifted into a school or a park nearby. First and foremost, shifting is a very difficult task because there is a superstition and a belief associated with the stones. The superstition is the stones should not be shifted. There's a curse associated with them. Okay, if somebody shifts the stones, they're going to attract something on themselves. They may die, they may get a disease, they'll suffer, and all of that. That
Right.
it takes a lot of convincing to get people to agree. And if you are a local resident, you can do it better than us because we're coming in as outsiders and trying to convince your people. But if you are a local person there, you have some advantage over us in doing that. You can do that. Again, it costs money. If you want to shift a stone from a location A to a location B, we need to hire a crane or whatever, and we need to we need a pedestal, a masonry wall or something built there. All that takes money. You find there's all of them need to be salvaged like this. Let's say you have one in Vijayanagar and say, look, I'll sponsor this
Yeah.
activity for the one in Vijayanagar. Happy to do that. Okay, a lot of people have done that, and that's great too. So any skill set, all the scanning stuff that we are talking about today is the outcome of two people who had the technology knowledge there. They said, look, I know I'm using this in my workplace for this kind of a work. Why not use it here? Okay. So I would say volunteerism in that sense is open-ended here. You want to give us money? Great. You want to bring your skill set to the table? Great. Now the articles that we are preparing, we are writing it in Kannada first. Okay, but we want it translated to English. If you can help
Okay.
us translate that, each of these is a 30, 60 page document. Lovely. If you're good at, if you're a copywriter, the language we use is something, we are at home with. If you think it can be written better, communication is better. If you're good at graphic design, page layouts, and let's say, look, you guys aren't doing this for impact. You have the content, but it's not laid out well. I'm excellent at Photoshop and I want to help you guys out or whatever. Please step up. We desperately need this, and more importantly, I'll put it this way: it is our job and it's our duty to do it too. Okay, you can shy away from it, but in the end, it's our home. Making this place a better place is our duty, no one else's work.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Totally. And no, absolutely. And some of those links, Sudhya, if you can send it to me, I'll make sure that it's also shared in the show notes. especially contributions. If there's in a way people can contribute, even in small amounts,
Sure.
it should be a good way to get going on that. So, though that's fascinating, I think we covered a lot of ground, where it started, how you got involved, where the bulk of activity has happened,
Yeah.
and kind of where it's also headed, right? So, kind of coming to a wrap up here. I think we covered a whole a lot of information. Hopefully, people will listen to this and want to get involved a little bit more. But before we wrap up, is there any final words
Yeah.
of
Sure.
any message from
So
you?
the all that I said was about the past. But think about Bangalore of the present. Okay? Whether you know it or not, or whether you acknowledge it or not, either ways, this city is shaping the future of not Bangaloreans or Indians, but the world. Anything and everything you can think about, whether it's a
Mhm.
aircraft engine or whether it's a MRI machine, whether it's a vaccine or whatever else you can think about, is being done here. There is a Bangalorean hand in it, no matter what.
Mhm.
Everything you can think about, the software that we're using, the hardware that we are looking at, the glasses that we wear, name it,
Yep.
and there's a Bangalore contribution in this. We
Yeah.
we have to realize this, and if we have to really go forward in that, taking that leadership position that I was talking about, you have to understand that Bangalore didn't happen today. There's 1,000-year past, and it's an extraordinary past.
Mm.
There's 100 lakes in the city of Bangalore. Somebody built. They had the vision, and those 100 lakes have sustained 40 generations to bring Bangalore to the point that it is today. They were not kings, they were just ordinary
Mhm.
citizens. And there's been innumerable hurdles in the past that have been overcome.
Mhm.
When you learn the past here, you're shaping the future. And this city is a global capital.
Yeah.
It's not a Silicon Valley of India or stuff like that. It's gone way past all of that today. In the same breath as I would say, as
Mm.
San Francisco or Berlin or Boston or some other place today, there's 8 or 10 cities that are called global cities as capitals. Bangalore's one, and this is the probably the only city that has such an incredible past, evidence past. Okay, let's not allow it to go waste. We can leverage that, and that's a huge stepping stone for the future. Yeah. So don't
Mm.
don't believe you don't
Absolutely.
have a role to play.
Absolutely.
Every one of us have a role to play in that. You don't have to be an historian. You don't have to be well moneyed, for that. You don't have to have 24 hours in a day to do this kind of work. You can sit anywhere in the world. You can do work for this. Let's make it happen. There's a lot to celebrate. Let's figure it out and let's celebrate it. That's all I would say. Thank you.
Yep. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thanks, Udaya. Thanks for sharing the journey. Thanks for sharing the project. And I'll let you go and have you enjoy the
Thank
rest
you.
of the morning. And
Thanks.
we shall stay in touch.